never slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate.
His was an interesting setting. It says that then a policeman came who they said was responsible for this case. He was a very talkative person, with a prominent mustache, and they said he had a great talent for knife throwing. He insisted that you must watch his videos on YouTube. He was one of those very theatrical and very talkative people named Rizaldi Rivera. His videos are actually interesting. It's truly a continuation of his skill. Like throwing a knife into a mirror, aiming behind his shoulder, from 20 meters away he cuts a credit card in half. We don't care about that. This is the person who, after Catherine Lee's husband's request, becomes responsible for this case. He comes and sits with him and says, "I'll talk to you." He takes them to a very humble room, and they sit on those plastic sandwich shop chairs, and he says, "Aside from the names and addresses of the case witnesses, which by law I cannot give you, I'm at your service for any other questions you may have." He talks to them for an hour. According to his habit, he says everything in a way that makes it seem like absolute truth, as if he had seen it with his own eyes. But he really tells them everything he knows. He says that on February 1st, 2012, Catherine Lee received an email from a Canadian man named Bill Maxwell who said, "I live in Manila and I have a partner named Tony. We want to buy a property for investment. We searched online and found you. You have a good reputation and work in a large area of southern Philippines. We want to work with you." Ms. Lee, a few years prior, was the head of the local real estate brokers union. She had won several awards and commendations. She was a 43-year-old woman, though she looked younger, very stylish, very cheerful, and friendly, with many friends and a good, orderly life. Everything was normal. She usually worked from her home, a very chic and attractive house in an affluent area in Las Piñas, which she had recently bought with her husband's help, thanks to a very good commission she received from a lucrative deal. Most of her work orders came from the internet, which is why when she saw this email, she immediately arranged to meet this Canadian man without checking any background information. According to this police officer Rivera, this failure to check their background ultimately led to her downfall. Bill and Tony didn't specify exactly what kind of place they were looking for. They just said they wanted it to be south of Las Piñas. It didn't matter if it was residential, undeveloped land, commercial, or a villa, or anything else. Only that it be a secure investment. For 2 days, he drove them around in his car, but it seemed the gentlemen were not yet ready to put down money. They had arranged to meet for the third day on the morning of February 12th, at the Starbucks coffee shop, a place not far from Lee's home. That day, 3 other brokers whom Lee had asked for help were also traveling with them. The Canadians arrived in a silver Toyota van. Bill was a tall man, 180 centimeters, with a noticeable belly and a full beard. The other one, Tony, had a neatly shaved face and wore a collared cap. From there, they drove to a complex called Ponderosa, a place 60 kilometers south of Manila, which used to be a flower garden. They showed them a piece of land there suitable for construction projects, then went for lunch at 3:50 p.m. at a local restaurant with 2 landowners whom Lee had invited to join them for a few hours. After that, everyone drove towards another flower farm 10 kilometers from the previous one. They arrived there at 4:50 p.m., drove around for an hour, and then when it was time to leave, the brokers and landowners got into one car. Tony and Bill told Lee, "You come with us in this Toyota so we can talk." At some point within the next 10 hours, Catherine Lee was shot 4 times at close range in the head. and her body was wrapped in a blanket and thrown into the garbage. This almost exact scenario was constructed by Rizaldi Rivera from interviews with Catherine Lee as husband, and others who saw her that day, as well as an examination of her emails, phone, and laptop. He was also able to produce 2 composite sketches of the Canadians based on the descriptions of people who saw them in different places that day and the guards at the farms they visited. However, when it came to the main task of finding the killers, his work ran into a wall with the Immigration Department and other agencies. They found that Tony and Bill's names appeared to be fake. Physical evidence was also very scarce. The Toyota van that people had seen that day had no license plate, only a temporary one, and when they traced the temporary plate from the Toyota dealership, they got nowhere. Nothing matched, leading them to conclude that the car was probably rented and its plate fake. On the car itself, there were no fingerprints, no hair, nothing. What attracted Rivera's attention in this crime was that Lee had been shot twice under each eye according to the report from a .22 caliber pistol. He says that his experience tells him that assassins in the Philippines usually don't use low caliber weapons for killing people. They go for military-grade weapons, .40 caliber pistols and such. This was one of the few times he had seen someone killed with a .22 caliber bullet, and his own judgment was that this showed someone was trying to send a message. This murder was out of pride to shoot someone twice under the eye like that. People don't kill like that. In his investigations, Rivera also encountered the case of another woman, a customs officer, who was killed in a similar way to Lee. However, that woman's family had decided not to pursue the case and did not come to this investigative department, so his hands were tied for further investigation. After a few months, Rivera was finally removed from this case. Other cases came up, other murders, and so this case was set aside. But like Jeremy Jamira, he also says that this murder case wouldn't leave him. Perhaps because of its extreme violence or whatever, for a long time he dreamt about it. But the reality was that there was very little evidence, and without evidence, he couldn't move forward. From 2012 to 2015, this case lay dormant for 3 years. Then, in April 2015, the U.S. Embassy called Rivera, saying that the D had some information about Catherine Lee's case. The story is that almost 2 years earlier, 18 months after Catherine Lee's murder, the D had arrested someone who was doing what they called security work outside of the U.S. He was a former U.S. Army Ranger. From this arrest, some things emerged, some files were compiled, and ultimately it led to this phone call with Rivera. Now let's see what the story of this arrest is. In July 2013, 18 months after Catherine Lee's murder, New York judicial authorities issued a sealed warrant for the arrest of a person named Joseph Hunter. Hunter was a 49-year-old American, a former Army Ranger, and his crime was conspiracy to murder a law enforcement officer. More precisely, Hunter's accusation was that he had created a team of international terrorists to kill an FBI informant and a DE agent for a Colombian drug cartel. The warrant was issued in July. On September 25th, Hunter was arrested in a safe house in Phuket, Thailand, and taken to the U.S. 2 members of his assassination team, who had neatly emailed him their resumes and such, were arrested simultaneously with Hunter in Liberia, and the 4th and 5th members, who were preparing weapons and getting ready for the operation, were arrested in a different province. When one reads this whole story, it seems like it was written by a playwright with a good sense for international conspiracies. In reality, this feeling is not far off because this D operation was actually a sting operation. The Colombian drug traffickers who ordered the hit were actually a series of informants who had practiced their roles very well. Their meetings and conversations were all part of setting a trap for these individuals. The FBI informant and DE agente were supposed to kill actually didn't exist. The safe house in Phuket, Thailand, had been bugged with cameras and microphones for a long time, and everything was under surveillance. For months, the D had been baiting Hunter and leading him on, giving him small, self-destructive jobs like guarding a drug shipment at sea. Little jobs here and there, preparing him for this big plan. When he was arrested in September, when the U.S. Department of Justice announced Hunter's arrest, the news exploded like a bomb. Hunter's alias was Rambo, and in the videos shown during his arrest, he was wearing a Homer Simpson t-shirt. His case was absolutely bizarre. An international assassin who recruited people from here, took them there, contracted killings, and so on. Then he was brought to the U.S. In the U.S., federal cases like this usually don't go to trial. In 95% of such cases, the defendant pleads guilty and reaches an agreement with authorities on a sentence without going to court. This is because when the government puts so many resources into incarcerating someone, there are few lawyers who can effectively defend against it. Therefore, it's to both sides' benefit to reach an agreement before going to court. Now, what is the connection between Hunter's arrest, Catherine Lee's murder, and our story? On December 21, 2014, a New York Times reporter made a very strange claim that Hunter had worked for a very mysterious criminal named Paul Le Roux. This person was once the head of an incredibly widespread and powerful cartel. Paul Le Roux was arrested in 2012 and has now been working as a top-secret informant for the U.S. government for 2 years. And he is the one who helped catch Hunter. A few days later, a newspaper wrote that Paul Le Roux was the most successful criminal genius they had ever heard of. This new media wave, more than a year after Hunter's arrest, gave a new twist to the story. Hunter, as lawyer, argued that the charges against his client should be dropped because his former boss was behind this sting operation. And in fact, if Hunter didn't follow his boss's orders, his boss would kill him. That's why he listened to him. That's why he made these plans. He also said that it was shameful that the U.S. government used such a wicked criminal, whose name was not mentioned in the case files, as a secret witness. Those who follow the case know that the secret witness in the file is Paul Le Roux, but his name is not in any government document. And every document that could reveal details about this person has been classified as top secret. 4 weeks later, in another twist, Hunter suddenly pleads guilty. This means that now there is no more talk of him doing these things out of fear of his boss, and the boss's name doesn't come up at all. There will be no more trial. Throughout 2015, the other co-defendants of Hunter follow his lead, one by one pleading guilty. Their cases are closed, archived, and they themselves are sent to federal prison awaiting sentencing. As we said, there's a lot of secrecy in the case, but thousands of pages across more than 12 files are accessible and can be read. Among the interesting things available are the transcribed conversations of Hunter and his men in that safe house. His men all have military backgrounds. One is a German soldier, one was a sniper in the Polish army, and another is an American soldier. There, Hunter tells them that there's actually an offer for a bonus job, overtime work, which is the story of Assassination. He says there's extra work and assassination if you're up for it, but if you don't want to, it's no big deal. But if you come forward for this job, there's very good money. To understand the scale of this man's cartel and crimes, one can make a comparison. At the time this man was doing these things, Al Capone was a well-known figure. Everyone in the world knew him. If you don't know Al Capone, the leader of the Mexican Sinaloa cartel, his story is told in the second episode of Channel B, He Was a Strange Man. Or for example, Victor Bout, a Russian arms dealer who was arrested in 2011 in a secret sting operation in Thailand. He was a well-known arms dealer at that time, and many articles were published about him here and there. Nicolas Cage even played a character based on his story in a movie. But what S in Paul Le Roux's file shows that this man's appetite for arms dealing is much greater than these people. Much more than people like Al Capone and Victor Bout. As one D officer says, Paul Le Roux was like Victor Bout on steroids. There's one photo of Paul Le Roux, probably the first one published, taken by a surveillance camera at the Rio de Janeiro airport. The image quality isn't very good. It shows a chubby white man with messy silvery hair and a dark beard. This is what he looks like. Now, let's go back to where we started the story. In Hunter S. file, there was also a note indicating that the prosecutor, based on the recorded conversations in the Phuket safe house, believed that Hunter had previously arranged the killing of other people, including 2 female real estate agents in the Philippines. In one of these transcribed texts, Hunter talks about hiring 2 assassins to kill a customs officer who had taken a bribe but didn't do what he was supposed to. He says, "You can't have the goods not pass through. You take the money, but you don't let the goods through. What's the deal?" They went and kept the person's house and life under surveillance and realized that in addition to customs work, he also worked in real estate. They went to him and said, "Show us a few houses we want to rent." They liked one and then said, "We want to see it again." The second time they went, they didn't even go inside. They shot him right at the door, threw the body in the house, and left. Hunter says in his conversations that this job was excellent and clean. It was raining that day, no one was outside, and no one saw them. Flawless. Elsewhere, he makes another subtle reference to killing another real estate agent. Then he says, "That job was sloppy." He says, "In my opinion, that job wasn't done cleanly at all. I had hired 2 people for that job, and I gave them a good bonus, but they messed up the work. So after the job, I fired them, sent them back home, and never called them again." Fast forward to summer 2015. 3D officers from the U.S. came to the Philippines to see Rivera. Rivera says he had prepared a PowerPoint presentation containing all the information he had gathered on the case. He showed it to them. Why should they be pursuing Catherine Lee's murder case in the Philippines? He asked. There must be a connection. He told the officers this, and they confirmed it, giving him a little more information. They said that these individuals were not actually Canadian and did not live in the Philippines. Their names were also not real. They were 2 Americans, 41 and 47 years old, named David Stilwell and Adam Samira, living in a small town in North Carolina, USA. These D officers had traced the same emails from Hunter and the conversations from the safe house and had reached these 2. It seemed Hunter had good connections with military contracting companies and used them to recruit people for his boss. All his emails are available. The strange thing about the emails is the level of detail in the instructions he gives them. He explicitly states when each person leaves, on which flight, from where they go to Manila, they arrive in Manila together. From there they take a taxi to a predetermined location, how much fare they pay, how much tip they give. He tells them everything down to the minute details. They went there, and a few days later, someone emailed Hunter, very poorly written, requesting more money. The email is there, written with terrible spelling and grammar, saying, "Sir, our expenses are high here. House, food, car, internet, phone. Please send us another $3,000. To keep the boss's expenses down, I pressured the place we rented to give us bedding and an air conditioner so that the cost wouldn't be too high. But we've run out of money, and they were very aggressive." While they were preparing this job, Hunter was also emailing the boss, requesting weapons for the operation. He says that on February 2nd they started tracking the subject, found the house. It has written in one place that her house is here, but she was always driving around. Then they contacted her and started viewing houses with her. Hunter, as heard in the tapes, told them in detail how to proceed. Bring her into the car. After driving half a kilometer, shoot her with a silenced weapon. wrap her in a blanket, tie her up, and throw her in the garbage. But he says, these idiots didn't listen to me. They went from one house to another with her. They saw this house, that house, houses where people lived, and these people all saw them together. Hunter exaggerates by saying almost 100 people saw their faces, but he understood correctly that many people had seen them. So many people had seen them that Rivera was able to create composite sketches and a pretty good approximation of their faces. In short, Hunter says that in the end, they did such a sloppy job that when they finished, he sent them airplane tickets and sent them back to America. He never gave them any more work and told them if the Philippine police were smart and not lazy, they would have taken the witnesses who saw your faces to the airport, shown them photos of all foreigners because all passports are scanned. They would have shown them the photos one by one and eventually identified you and dealt with you. But the Philippine police are dumb and lazy, and these guys were very lucky to get out alive. In this job, you have to be clever. In short, they did the job there. On February 14th, they emailed their expenses to Hunter, then the money came, and they sent the money to the U.S. A few weeks later, they returned home separately. After the D officers came to the Philippines and saw the case file, they sent a report to the U.S. from there, and the very next day, these two individuals were arrested in their small town. Local media wrote that they were two respectable men who owned a hardware and gun store together. People liked them, and they often participated in trade shows, demonstrating and selling some of the equipment they had invented, such as a bra that served as a gun holster called Boob and Body. In total, about 150 weapons were seized from Stillwell's home, but besides a few photos and shooting videos on their Facebook pages, which isn't very strange for people like them, and in their kind of life, there was nothing else to suggest that they were international assassins. Their neighbors and acquaintances were all naturally very shocked to hear the news. They were then transferred to New York and became co-defendants with Hunter to be tried there. Who is Catherine Lee that someone would spend $70,000 to kill her, sending two people from America to the Philippines? This is all because of the person you call the mastermind. The story is that Paul Le Roux, who is now in U.S. police custody, paid Catherine Lee $3 million to buy a villa for him. Lee then found someone to handle the house deed and money. After a while, that person ran off with the money. After that person disappeared with the money, the mastermind ordered Catherine Lee's murder. Rivera, the Philippine police officer who investigated Catherine Lee's case, says he is sure that the other person was also killed, although no body was ever found. This Paul Le Roux, whom we will gradually get to know more about in later parts, is a stubborn, arrogant, and extremely dangerous person. What you just heard was the first episode of the 12th part of Channel B podcast titled Mastermind. I, Ali Bandari, produce Channel B podcast with the help of Namlik. One episode of the Mastermind story is uploaded simultaneously every week on Namlik, me and SoundCloud. If you like true crime podcasts, visit Namlik, me. The number of good Persian podcasts is gradually increasing, and you will probably find something that suits your taste and that you enjoy. Introduce the 12th part of Channel B Mastermind to anyone you think enjoys hearing new and true stories. Follow Channel B Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Telegram with the ID at Channel Podcast to be informed about new episodes and to receive interesting peripheral and supplementary materials about the Mastermind story and stories that have been told before. Channel B Podcast Music.